Hello and welcome to TFL Now. Today we've got a cool comparison between two Toyota Tacomas, old versus new. Now this is the old truck. It's our long-term 2002 Tacoma project truck over at TFL Classics. We're calling the series Baby Yoda. And to my left, well, this is a brand new 2021 Tacoma TRD Pro. And in this video, we are going over the exterior styling. We're going to talk about the similarities, the differences, talk about the engine options, go through the transmission, the interiors, the bed, the towing and storage, and lastly, take them on the road and see how they drive. Now let's start out by talking about the old Tacoma. This is referred to as the first generation Tacoma, and they built these from the late 90s through the mid 2000s. And this first generation Tacoma is an extremely popular truck here in Colorado. You see them absolutely everywhere, and there's a good reason for that. They are simple, they are bare bones, but they are off-road worthy and they last forever. A variety of engine options, a ton of different configurations, and this one is a little bit unusual. Now this is a four-wheel drive Tacoma. You see a lot of them with two-wheel drive, but it is a four-wheel drive, so you've got the raised suspension. It's also a single cab truck, which means that behind the front bench, there's nothing. Now these trucks were available in both the Access cab, which gave you a little bit of extra room behind the front seats, as well as the full-on double cab, which gave you a proper four-door configuration. Now, I don't have any data to back this up, but it seems like the vast majority of Tacomas of this era I see on the road are the ones with the little Access cab. So they've got the space behind the front seats, maybe with some little jump seats back here. I don't see many of the single cabs, and I certainly don't see many of the four doors. Those are much more unusual. Now, being a single cab, it's got a big bed. It's got a 6-foot long bed, which means it's super usable for work and for play. Now, we just installed today this soft topper. Be sure to stay tuned to TFL Classics for the full install and overview of the soft topper. But being a 6-foot long bed, it's much more usable than some of the modern trucks, some of the modern beds. Let's go transition to the new Tacoma. So you Toyota fanatics out there may immediately notice this is far from an apples to apples comparison. The old truck is a single cab 4-cylinder. This new truck is a V6 with, of course, 4 doors and a short bed. There are a couple of different cab and bed configurations in the new Tacoma. However, a single cab is not one of the options, not on this 3rd generation truck. Now, at least seat of the pants, I feel like I see a lot of these 4 doors cruising around our streets here in Colorado. Not so many of the shorter Access cabs, but you can still get a smaller cab in the Tacoma with a longer bed. Now, being the 4-door, this one has a 5-foot bed in this TRD Pro configuration, and it's actually a very different bed setup than what you'd find on the old Tacoma. Let me show you. Now, the 02 Tacoma has a good old-fashioned steel bed. So the bed floor, the bed walls are made out of steel, which we have bed lined. Let's check out the new Tacoma. Now the new Tacoma has a very different bed. First of all, dampened tailgate, of course, but the construction is entirely new and pretty space age. So the actual bed floors and the bed sides are a composite material, which is kind of like a really reinforced plastic here, and this one has a bed mat that sits on top of that. I believe this saves a lot of weight. It actually seems to be pretty durable. People have done some pretty nuts stuff with these new Tacomas, so time has definitely evolved, at least in terms of bed technology. Unfortunately, as time has gone on, the Tacoma has gotten quite a bit porkier compared to this first generation. Now this is a really small truck. The wheelbase, granted not apples to apples, but the wheelbase on this truck is something like 20 or so inches shorter than the wheelbase on that new truck. Overall length, a couple feet shorter. Overall width, many inches narrower, and that's nice driving around town, but in terms of overall design, pretty much nothing is shared. Now we do have a conventional halogen headlight here with a halogen turn signal and a big chrome grille with vertical slats. The new one is much updated. The new Tacoma, like pretty much every new vehicle on the road today, has a very large and in-charge grille. The TRD Pro here has the Toyota script written across the center, and the headlights are full LED. And check out these turn signals. They do this really kind of cool sequential pattern. Plus, being the TRD Pro, one headlight says TRD, one says Pro. Now the old Tacoma, had a variety of engines. Depending on whether or not you got 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, you actually got a choice of 4 cylinders, so This one is a 2.7 liter four-cylinder. It develops about 150 horsepower, 177 pound-feet of torque or so, and then some trucks even had a V6. I believe it was a 3.4 liter in these first-generation Tacomas. And actually, much like the new one, you could get a choice of automatic and manual transmissions. This one has the 4-speed automatic. So the new Tacoma for 2021 is still available with a choice of engines. Now, the base engine is a 2.7 liter four-cylinder, similar to the old one. That one makes about 159 horsepower, but this is the only engine available in the top dog TRD Pro, the 3.5 liter V6. It develops 278 horsepower, and it's available, get this, in a variety of transmissions. Let's take a look. That's right, the Tacoma, even in 2021, is still available with a manual transmission. Take a look at this. It is a 6-speed manual transmission with this chunky gear knob. It's a really satisfying knob to hold, and actually the throws are really, really good for a pickup truck. It's quick, it's precise, and it is easy to use. More on this when we go for a drive. Of course, there is an automatic option as well, but if you're going to buy a 2021 Tacoma, you're going to want the manual transmission because the automatic paired with the V6 is a little bit lethargic. Back in 2002, if you got the manual Tacoma, it would have been a 5-speed, not the 6-speed like in the new truck. But if you went for the automatic, it was a 4-speed with this really crazy looking pistol grip shifter. This is what the key looked like in 2002. It was a simple blade style key, no buttons for lock or unlock. It doesn't have central locking, but you take the key, stick it in the ignition, and fire it up. The interior in the old Tacoma is very no nonsense. In this truck, I have no buttons here on the steering wheel. I have no heated seats. I have no heated mirrors. I don't even have power mirrors. I have roll-up windows. I don't even have power lock. You still got to use the little plunger. But the upside of that is even with 182,000 miles, the interior looks and feels and works pretty much brand new. Nothing is broken. Everything functions as it should, including the AC. Pretty much one of the only luxury features. Oh, I forgot, cruise control. It does have cruise control. So what else do you need? Now, in terms of design, it's pretty much square, black and gray plastic. There's not a lot of design, although the gauges are remarkably sporty. They're white with red accents. Okay, maybe a red line isn't an accent, but white and red is a cool look. The key on this new Tacoma is still blade style, but take a look at this. Now we have lock and unlock features. But it still requires a slot to start the vehicle. So into the slot, foot on the clutch, and start her up. Now, interior-wise, the new Tacoma has a lot more in terms of features and technology, including dual-zone automatic climate control with heated seats. It also has, check this out down here, parking sensors, an electric rear window, a USB port, and even Qi wireless charging. To put the new Toyota in a 4-wheel drive, gone is the lever, and in is this little knob. Now I've got a 2-wheel drive setting, 4-wheel drive, and 4-wheel drive low, all actuated via twisting this little knob. But of course, being the TRD Pro, we have a lot more than that when it comes to off-road technology. If you look up here by the ceiling, we have a locking rear differential as well as A-Track, which is like the Toyota off-road traction control. To engage 4-wheel drive in the old Tacoma, we use a good old-fashioned transfer case lever. So in terms of capability options, we have 2 high, down into 4 high, and then if I put the transmission into neutral, I have a neutral setting on the transfer case as well, and then into 4-wheel drive low. But that's pretty much it on this particular Tacoma. If you got like a TRD of this era, you would have had more off-road goodies, but this is just more of a basic model, so a low range with open diffs is pretty much all you're going to find. In terms of weird features, there are a couple of unusual ones here in the Tacoma, including this fold-out cup holder, or is it a bottle holder, in the middle of the truck. And then I've got a switch over here, which turns the overdrive on and off. That's pretty old school. And to the left of the steering wheel, I have a button for the electronically controlled transmission, so I can kind of engage a power setting for a little bit of additional go. And then look at this, up on the dashboard, I've got a switch to manually engage and disengage the passenger airbag. Now the new Tacoma also has a couple of unusual features, including the clutch start cancel button. Push that in and you can start the vehicle without actually using the clutch. I believe you can even start it in gear, which is a little bit unusual for a modern vehicle. To the left of that, we have a button for the inverter, and above that, we've got a button that says view, and that engages in off-road camera view. In terms of capability, this truck has a GVWR of 5,100 pounds, and it's rated to tow 3,500 pounds thereabout using a hitch. You can actually also tow with these old Tacomas using the bumper, but this is a good segue into some of the issues with these older trucks, which is rust. They do rust quite violently, and they have certain areas where they're known to rust, such as the bumper, also the frame. But we're going to have the bumper replaced. We think the frame has already been replaced, so in terms of rust, we're good to go with this truck. But let's see what the capability is on the new one. This Tacoma has a GVWR of 5,500 pounds, so 400 pounds more than that Tacoma, but that Tacoma, the old one, is much smaller and much lighter, which is interesting, but the towing capacity is way up on this new truck. It's rated at about 6,400 pounds, and that goes up and down depending on the trim of Tacoma, but that's a lot of weight for a relatively small truck. Here we go for a ride in our 02 Tacoma. We call Baby Yoda because it's a Tacoma, and it is really, really small, and that's probably my favorite part of this truck. Is it's great to drive around pretty much anywhere. It's easy to maneuver in the city, it does pretty well on the highway, super easy to park, and overall just a good runner. Now out on the road, let me give it some gas here as we merge onto this main road. 4,000, 5,000 RPM in a second. It really doesn't accelerate all that slowly. I thought it would be much worse than it is. You never feel like you're slowing down traffic, and in an emergency, it takes off pretty well, and it will typically do highway speeds without difficulty. The steering is really precise, and the interesting thing about this truck is just how well screwed together it is. I mean, even at 182,000 miles nearly, nothing squeaks, nothing rattles, nothing shakes, nothing shimmies. It just works, and that's what made these Tacomas so popular. Is unlike other trucks of the day that would fall apart, trim pieces would come off of them, the Tacomas would always start and they would always run. They would rust away if you weren't careful, but yeah, just super well made little trucks. All right, we've got a tight turnaround here. Let's see if the little itty bitty Tacoma can manage it. We do have some oversized tires on this. Ooh, are we gonna do it? Oh yes, even with some parked cars. The interesting thing about these little Tacomas is they are pretty hard workers. You can put them through a lot on the farm or on the ranch or even out in the off-road trails, and they just keep coming back for more. There's a reason that these are used by pretty much every country around the world in one form or another. Now this is a single cab, which means it has a nice short wheelbase. I think it looks pretty cool, but it really isn't all that practical for more than one, maybe two people. There's just nowhere to put stuff securely. You know, if you have a dog and a friend or two, you're pretty much stuck, and not a lot of options for groceries. But if you add something like a soft topper, like we did in this truck, you've got a lot more storage capacity and capability. At least keeps things somewhat out of sight, keeps things nice and dry, and they become more usable. Now the ride on this truck is phenomenal. The brakes are a little bit grabby, but the ride is truly incredible. You can hit bumps, even speed bumps, at 10-15 miles an hour, and it just soaks them up with the independent front suspension. Still has a solid rear axle, but it really doesn't matter in a truck like this. It's time to take the new Toyota Tacoma for a ride. Now, this 2021 model, and actually all third gens, have this interesting seating position, which I've talked about in the past, where you sit pretty low in the truck, but your legs are actually positioned pretty high, so you kind of sit like you're riding a magic carpet. And I really don't prefer this driving position. It's either something you love or you hate. And Toyota says they've tried to address it on the new trucks by adding an up and down function on the seat, which is great, but then my head runs into the sunroof. Especially when it's closed, I run out of headroom. So it's just something you have to get used to. The old Toyota, that doesn't seem to be as much of an issue. Merging onto the main road in the 2021 Tacoma with the manual transmission, first gear, foot to the floor. Whoa! Well, I'll tell you what, that's a heck of a lot faster than the old one. And this is the first time I've actually driven the third generation Taco with the stick. And it is so much better than the automatic. And the new one with the manual it feels so much better. Like, it really brings the engine to life. I think part of the issue is that the 3.5 makes a lot of its power up high in the rev range, which means when you're riding an automatic that's trying to preserve fuel, you're always in the wrong gear. Now, turning radius, also pretty good in the new one. But yeah, what an improvement over the automatic. I would strongly recommend seat of the pants impression to get the stick if you're in the market for this truck. Plus, why would you not want to? It's one of the last trucks available with the manual. In a second, okay, the throws are still pretty long for some sporty driving, but it's not bad at all. Now, the steering on this truck is pretty good. I actually want to say the old one has more steering feel and actually feels a little bit more precise. Part of that could be down to the weight difference and the size difference, but this one's a little bit less precise. However, the ride is excellent. Long wheelbase, you hit bumps, it just soaks everything up with ease. Now, off-road, I'm not really sure how the two trucks stack up. We're going to have to bring both of them out onto a trail or onto, how about a yak ranch, and figure out how they do, and that'll be the real test of these two. So be sure to stay tuned for that one as we move into 2021 here, because I think it'd be fun to bring it to David's yak ranch and see which one works harder and see which one is better off-road in the real world and on a working farm. So at TFL here, we've really been racking our brains amongst the team as to when you would need that clutch start cancel button. We've checked the owner's manual. It was a little bit vague. We checked the forums, and it sounds like the main reason you would need this is if you were in a real bind and you had to start the truck in first gear right off the bat from off. So if you were in like a really tight situation, you couldn't have any slip backwards. So in the name of science, I guess I'll give it a go. Let's make sure it works just in neutral first. So I'm going to turn the truck off, push the button. Okay, my foot is off the clutch. I'm in neutral. Let's see if it'll start. Yep. Okay. Now here comes the brutal one. So I'm going to go into first gear like we're off-road, really stuck. I am in low range. This is probably going to fall into do not try at home here, folks. Okay, handbrake off. Clutch start cancel engaged. All right, are you ready? Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. That was actually a lot less dramatic than I thought it would be. I thought it would like really yank you. So I could potentially see how that's useful here. We'll try it one more time. Truck off into first gear. The button is pushed in. My foot is totally off the clutch. Take my foot off the brake. It's actually a lot less taxing on the starter than I thought it would be. Let's close this puppy out by talking about value. Now, this 02 Tacoma with 181,000 miles, we paid $7,700 for, which sounds like a lot for a small old truck, but that outlines one of the best parts of Toyota ownership is that here in Colorado at least, they just like don't depreciate. Even with over 200K, it's not uncommon to see these Toyotas for, you know, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. Now the new Tacoma has an MSRP of $47,000 or so with the manual transmission, and once again, own it for a couple of years, you're probably not going to lose all that much money on it. So it's not a bad investment, at least in terms of new truck purchases. So which one would I rather have? Well, the new Tacoma is far more comfortable, far more refined. It's more off-road worthy with its locking rear diff and its A-track system. And actually, with the manual transmission, it is so much more drivable than other automatic third-gen Tacomas I've driven. But I still don't fit very well. My feet are just at the same level as my butt, and my head is pretty close to the ceiling. So I think for that reason, I'd still stick with the old one, even with the bench seat and the single cab. I just fit a little bit more comfortably, and yes, it's quite slow with the little 4-cylinder, but it's a good solid running truck that would last me many years if I were to buy it. I have no doubt the new one will also be pretty darn reliable, but for my money, I think the old one takes a biscuit. Well, as always, this is Tommy with the Fast Lane Truck. Check out TFLtruck.com for the latest and greatest in new truck reviews.